Chalo, good morning, all of you.
एक
I am
सेकंड
Dr. Dinesh Agrawal, Vice President. I am in Nagpur branch. Welcome all of you to this webinar on COVID-19 vaccine update. As all of you are aware, today everybody is discussing about the COVID-19 vaccine, and it is launched also yesterday. So there are a lot of questions in the minds of the not only in the minds of the common people, but also in the minds of the various doctors and the medicos. There are various questions that who should take, who should not, which vaccine is safe, when to take, what are the side effects of the vaccine, is it chargeable, is it free, how to register for the vaccine. So to answer all these questions, today we have with us Dr. Sanjay Gandhi. He is a public health specialist. And today we have with us as a chief guest Dr. Mangesh Patel sir from the Mumbai. So to begin with, I invite President Dr. Archana Kothari madam for her inaugural remarks for today's CME. Archana madam.
Thank you, Dinesh. On behalf of Nagpur IMA, I welcome you all to this very important webinar on vaccine updates. As rightly explained by Dinesh, there are so many questions in our mind, and right now the vaccine is available for only healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers. And there are also three types of vaccines. Which vaccine should I take, and what should I do if I am infected already? I am having antibody titers, whether I should take the vaccine or not. These are so many questions in our mind which will be answered in today's session. We welcome you, Dr. Patel sir. He is a versatile, young, dynamic leader from Nagpur, from Thane. He is a pediatrician and he is a leader at state and national level both. He is very much doing work in COVID vaccine, also promoting and leading from the front for promotion of this vaccine. We welcome Dr. Sanjay Gandhi sir also. He is today's speaker, a public health specialist, a very good person to answer all our queries. And we have a convener who is a dynamic leader, young dynamic leader from our Nagpur IMA, Dr. Sanjay Deshpande. We welcome you all, sir, and we will start with the webinar. Let me tell you all that we are going to take series of these webinars, then public awareness programs also. So your support is needed for all this, and I welcome all the viewers also for this webinar. And thank you Dinesh. You can continue.
Thank you, madam, for your words of wisdom. Our today's chief guest is Dr. Mangesh Patel sir. Is already explained by Archana madam. He is a young, dynamic pediatrician practicing in Dombivli. Very dynamic, very grassroots level worker of the IMA. Very active, not at the state level but also at the national level. Currently, sir is the national secretary of the IMA Hospital Board of India at the center, as well as he is also currently joint secretary of the IMA Maharashtra state. Very dynamic, very young leader. I invite Mangesh Patel sir for your words of wisdom.
Thank you. Dr. Archana Kothari, President of IMA Nagpur branch. Dr. Rajesh Samar Bande, Honorary Secretary of the branch. Very obviously respected past National President Dr. Ashok Adhav sir. And today's learned speaker Dr. Sanjay Gandhi. And my dear brothers and sisters from Nagpur. First of all, let me thank IMA Nagpur branch for inviting me on this platform. Secondly, it is a moment to congratulate all of you and everyone out there in the medical fraternity of the modern medicine for the two reasons. Number one, since March last year, the country and the world has been fighting against the pandemic, and the power, the might, and the legacy of the modern medicine has been propagated and proved by you all beyond doubt. It was the public sector and the private sector which were involved in the COVID management. As we all are aware of the status of the healthcare in our country, I will not like to go into details of that same. But definitely it is worthwhile to mention over here. At the end of 10 or 11 months, the power and might of the private sector, and that too, small and mid-sector hospitals, clinics, has been proved beyond doubt. These hospitals, these clinics, and all these Indian Medical Association doctors, all of you have provided a very service-oriented clinical approach and medical management for the community and for the citizens of this country. Not only that, many of our IMA branches, many of our stalwarts and leaders, they have provided the administration guidelines time to time. Whenever there has been issues and we felt appropriate, we have conveyed it to the state or union government and as well as the local civic body level. We also witnessed a lot more issues during the local civic administration. In spite of working during the draconian COVID pandemic, our doctors and hospitals have suffered a lot at the hand of local civic administration. And we have tried to rectify that along with the government, state government as well as union government. Second reason to congratulate all of you is yesterday the India-made COVID vaccination was launched all across the country at the hands of our respected Prime Minister. Nearly 1.91 lakh vaccinations were done yesterday. Why I am congratulating all of you is because a very simple and very known fact that vaccines is a collective triumph of the modern medicine, and you all represent the modern medicine. It has been the Indian Medical Association through its modern medicine practitioners which always has propagated the vaccines. Unfortunately, why there has been so much chaos, not only in our country, but outside the countries also. I keep on speaking with a lot of medical activities, activists on the Western world also. They also are facing the similar things. They are also trying their best to erase the misunderstandings about this vaccine, which are being propagated through the social media. Basically, the opposition to the vaccine or the whatever nonsense which is being propagated across the people, the illiteracy is basically responsible. There have been a few factions in the society which always have been against the vaccinations. This is not the first time that humans are being vaccinated. We have witnessed the vaccine and seen the vaccines and used vaccines for ages together. There are so many vaccines like BCG, triple polio, which we have been using before our birth of this generation. Now, why there is so much of chaos? One simple thing people are not understanding, and it becomes our natural, ethical, and moral responsibility to make people understand certain things. The preparation or manufacturing of the vaccine, whatever process is there, that process already has been established and has been applied to many such vaccines. The same process has been applied for this production of this vaccine as well. There may be different types of vaccine available. Few may be vector-based vaccine, few may be live attenuated vaccine. Other vaccine, third vaccine is from the Pfizer. It is a different type. Oxford vaccine is the same, just like what our this Serum Institute vaccine is there. So all these things are there. But overall, mRNA vaccination preparation process, it is there existing since decades together. Yesterday only, while I was speaking to some press reporters, I just gave one very simple example. Today we are speaking on the Zoom platform, and last 1 year we have seen most of the people knowing and using the Zoom platform. But for everyone's knowledge, this Zoom platform is in existence since 2002. But before last year, we never been of any knowledge about this Zoom platform, or we never had any opportunity to use this Zoom platform, and we never took any efforts to know about this Zoom platform. Suddenly, during last year, we all have taken efforts what exactly the Zoom platform is, what is the online platform, and how successfully meetings can be conducted on this platform. Same thing lies with the process of the vaccination. The process of a preparation has been there in existence since decades. The same process is applied to this vaccine for the COVID, as far as the side effects or whatever it is there, they are there for all the vaccines. Similarly, they are for the COVID vaccines. But unnecessarily, there has been a lot of chaos being created against the vaccine based on the side effects and everything. That's not very true. And I again appeal all of you that we are natural responsibility to make people understand. First, we all should understand, then we can make people understand. This is a very natural vaccine, normal vaccine, and without fear, everyone should take this vaccination. And let us go ahead and get rid of this pandemic. And I again thank Nagpur branch for inviting me for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patil sir, for sharing your views. Now I invite Dr. Sanjay Deshpande sir, who is a past IMA president of Nagpur branch, and today's finance director of IMA AMS PPS, for further proceedings. Over to Sanjay Deshpande sir.
Thank you, Dinesh. In fact, I cannot express myself in words that when Dr. Archana Kothari, our president of IMA Nagpur, called me and told that we are organizing a webinar on vaccination. And when we were discussing about the speaker, only one name came into my mind, and even Dr. Archana Kothari's mind, was Dr. Sanjay Gandhi. I cannot say that it's my pride. I cannot say that it's my privilege, but I can say that it's my pride, it's my privilege, and it's my pleasure to introduce one of my very closest friend. We are together since 1982. We cannot call that we are childhood friends, but definitely we are friends from our adolescence. And that is so pleasurable to introduce one of your very near and dear on such a platform. Dr. Sanjay Gandhi passed his MBBS and MD Preventive and Social Medicine from our prestigious institution, Government Medical College, Nagpur. First, he actually spent his few initial years of his professional life as a lecturer and associate professor in Grant Medical College, Mumbai. Then he shifted himself to a very good role of surveillance medical officer in Pulse Polio program launched by World Health Organization. He worked as an SMO for public Pulse Polio program very effectively. Then he joined very many other international agencies. Out of that, there are many. He worked with international agencies like WHO, PATH, where he worked for around 1 decade. And later on, he shifted to GlaxoSmithKline organization. Currently, he is holding the post of vice president for the Gavi or vaccines. Its portfolio is mainly vaccine. From last around 20 years, he has been working on vaccines on various other diseases also. And it will be a very apt situation that he is today talking to us on this vaccine. He is involved with Gavi also, that Global Alliance of Vaccine Initiative throughout the world. So I think he is the right person to make us aware about all this vaccination against COVID. So what I suggested that first Dr. Gandhi will speak for around 30-35 minutes. Participants, they have some questions, they can write on the chat, and then we can ask the questions to our learned speaker. So welcome, Dr. Sanjay Gandhi. Again, welcome to your own home. He is the respected member of IMA Nagpur also. So our member having such a great position in the field of vaccine. We welcome you, dear. And now the platform is yours. You can share your views. Thank you.
Thanks, Anju. Thank you very much. I feel privileged to speak, and it's like a homecoming, though I am sitting in Mumbai. Wherever it comes to Nagpur, it's a kind of a first love. And I have always wished to come back, but somehow the destiny is not bringing me there. So again, thanks the IMA to inviting me for this app topic. I will try to cover some of the aspects which are being burning, but just to give a background information first. And then we can have a more of an interactive or question answers if there are some more remaining, which again, I believe it's a kind of a very dynamic scenarios. If I'm unable to answer immediately, or there are some queries, burning queries, yes, please reach out to me on my emails, and then we can have a dialogue later on as well. So next slide, please. Yeah, so just before starting, just a disclaimer that I am currently a full-time employee of GSK Biologicals, but this presentation is made in my personal capacity using resources available in public domain. Opinion expressed during the sessions will be completely mine and should not be attributed to my organizations. And this particular presentation I have made specifically for today's sessions. Till today, I have been reading a lot and all that, never made a kind of a presentation on COVID-19 vaccines. Next, please. So before we start, I'll not go through this storyline. I think each and everyone, whosoever is associated with vaccines or have a limited understanding of the vaccines per se, must be very well aware of. This is a story of a kind of a smallpox vaccines innovation, a kind of a journey that started for the vaccine preventable diseases and all that. The point I would like to make, what the mentor have told Edward Jenner. Next push. Don't think, try. So that those are the big words coming from a mentor, and then that give a kind of a boost or confidence to an individual or an innovator to work alike, taking those kind of a calculated risk. Based on that, and now then we know about the history part of it. Now this is a time where healthcare professional like us should also act. Yes, thinking is important, but overthinking sometimes kills the whole kind of a concept that is being evolved. Everybody have done their part. Now it's our role to play. So we'll just go through it, what needs to be done when the vaccine has been rolled out. Next one. So these are some of the aspects which I'll be touch base on the current few of the slides. Starting with the vaccination development timeline. What are the current status update? I think there is one slide missing which I have updated later, but still fine. About the vaccine development platforms, which are the current platforms, status update, safety surveillances, vaccine confidence, and the public health assessment. Next. Yeah, so just in a nutshell, try to understand the vaccine development timeline. In general, it takes almost like 15 years. And I'm making a kind of a conservative, it could be from 10 years to 30 years. There are various examples. Again, I'm not going in those details as such. Now you can see those three red boxes. On the left-hand side is a kind of a preclinical development. Whenever there is a burden, whenever the disease is occurring, whenever the surveillance picks up some kind of a new organisms, the basic researchers starts working in the lab. They try to identify the organisms, try to understand the pathogenesis and all those kind of stuff, and try to work out what could be a kind of an antigen which will be able to respond in or have a kind of an immunological response when given to a body, human body. So those kind of things usually used to take around 5 years. Now it comes to the clinical development. The second box is basically about the clinical development when the vaccines get tested in human beings. And now there is a distinct difference between a vaccines and a drug. Usually the drug is being given to people who are sick broadly. Yes, there are kind of prescriptive preventive modalities are available, but most of the time drugs are given for a sick. Whereas the vaccines, most of the time are being given to people who are completely healthy. So primary important outcome of development of vaccines during clinical development is, can someone mute his mic, please? Thank you. Yeah, so if you go through the phases of development, there is phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and all across the clinical development, safety is prime focus of clinical development of a vaccine. Efficacy comes little later part of it, but safety is, since if you look all across all the phases and all that, safety is a primary importance. Once these 3 phases are over, then it goes for the licensures. The vaccines comes in the market, the private, usually comes in the private market. And if it is of a public health importance, if the disease is of public health importance, it goes for a national rollout in the national immunization program. So that's the general life cycles of a development till the introduction, till it receives in the recipient end. So jointly, generally it takes around 15 years. Next slide. Now look at this particular timeline. For a COVID vaccine, we had a kind of a virus or a condition identified at end of December 2019 and early week of December 2020. By 11 months, we were having a vaccine which was approved for emergency use. Now the condition was unprecedented, pandemic was unprecedented, approvals and the kind of all the stakeholders came together and worked on it was also unprecedented. Never in the history of vaccines we have seen such kind of a timeline when we have a licensure to a vaccines which can be used on emergencies as such. Next, please. Now, just to give you a glimpse about the kind of a pipeline. Now, I hope you will be able to see some numbers, but again, those are not important. Like in the preclinical, where still it's not in the clinical development, we have around 173 molecules. 173 antigens are under testings right now. Whereas in the clinical development, we have around 64. Of the 64, they are in the various phases. 15 have reached in the phase 3. That means they are safe. They have shown to be immunogenic. And now currently the efficacy data are getting collected. So in the different stages, they have gone through those phases, and the 15, at least we can confidently say that 15 of the antigens or 15 of the vaccines candidate will be coming in the market where we will be having some confidence that we will be able to take care of the pandemic. Now, if you look, if you look at those two small boxes on the on the left hand side, if you look, there are different platforms that are being used, and most of the platforms are using the protein or the subunit that is the spike proteins that is being used as an antigen candidates, and the others are using different platforms. We will be having some discussion related to those platforms little later. But the point is, when it comes for the implementations, for the implementing managers, if the different vaccines have a different permutations combination, it becomes a nightmare for the logistic nightmare for the implementation. The current vaccines, what are there? They are coming in a different schedules. Somebody is 1-dose schedule, 2-dose schedules, 3-dose. Most of them are coming as a 2-dose schedule. If you look for the route of administration, most are coming as an intramusculars. But yes, the work is going on the oral vaccines as well. And even for the injectable vaccines, it's coming as intramuscular or intradermal and subcutaneous as well. Again, if you look for the intradermal or subcutaneous, it becomes a little logistic challenge. But yes, our workers are confident to give those kind of vaccines, even if they comes as a subdermal, intradermal point vaccines. Like if you look at the Zydus, which is being developing the vaccines, which is the DNA vaccine, which will be coming most from probably is the intradermal route. Next, please. Yeah. So this slide I've just put, this is a little 1 month old slide coming from the which was presented at Gavi board meeting, just to give an idea that how we are trying to improve the access, because pandemic, when we say pandemic, each and every citizen of the world is getting impacted. But what happens usually whenever you see the vaccines, where the access to the vaccines usually come first to the developed part of the world, and developing part of the world, the vaccines is little later introduced, getting later. What this means, like the lives of the developed part of the world is a little better as compared to the lives of the developing part of the world. And this has been historically, if you take any vaccines, the vaccines when we were trying to during our PSM days and during our PG days and the implementations part of it, usually it used to take 2 to 3 decades to come to the vaccines to our part of the world. Now this timeline is getting shrinking. And now you can see that these vaccines are getting introduced almost equally at the same time when it's getting introduced in the developed part of the world. And thanks to a kind of a platform called Gavi, they have designed and developed a platform called COVAX specifically for this pandemic, which is called COVAX. And there are many partners. And if you, again, I'm not going the details part of it. Is a wonderful itself. We'll be taking a kind of a one full presentation or a topic in itself. But the point I'm trying to make, there are mechanisms in place where each and every country will have the access to the vaccine, and at least 20% of the cohort will be able to get. I think 192 countries have signed a kind of an agreement, or they have a kind of a relationship with this COVAX facilities, and each and every countries will have the access to those vaccines. And what happens usually, manufacturers comes in or chip in because whenever they consider there is a business associated with that introductions. Now what happens, there are many players who do not venture into it just because R&D is a very, very costly affair. If 100 antigens comes in pipelines, 1 or 2 become successful. Now the success rate has increased, it has gone up to 10, but even 90% of there are failures. So who will take the brunt of the kind of a failures as such? That mechanisms is also being put in place here, in the sense that there is a concept called CEPI, COVAX, which are also trying to give an R&D fundings for some of the development antigens which are in pipelines as such. Next, please. Yeah. So now this is, I have missed one slide to insert, which I've done in the morning, but I'll try to explain from this slide itself. So basically, the current vaccine, there are certain vaccines which have been approved for emergency use. Now, this is not a new concept. This started since Ebola outbreak, when all the stakeholders came together, and then they came with WHO came with an idea of the emergency use. When the risk was higher, then at given time, even if we do not have all the data in hand, if the intervention is safe, then they used to have some kind of an approval. So there is a mechanism in place. It's not like just something is coming on table and you just approve it. So there is a process in place based on which the emergency use approvals happen. And it is not happening like because the people now are challenging in the Indian regulators. It is not happening in the India. It's also happening, the emergency use approvals happening in USA by the FDA. It's happening in Europe by the EMRA. It's also happening in the UK. So you take the country's name where we have a very good regulatory systems, including India. All these regulators are looking at the process, looking at the different documentation, the evidence, whatever is being presented, and they're trying to give an emergency use approval. That means it will be not available in market. It needs to be used under the guidance how it's being given by the regulators as such. Now the vaccines which you are seeing on screen here are two messenger RNA vaccines coming from, I don't know how to mute the call. Yeah, so two of the vaccines are the messenger RNA vaccines. So what is a messenger RNA vaccines? Messenger RNA vaccine is a synthetic biology. Why we were able to identify the antigens within 1 month of time after identification of the disease? Just because we were having some data available, data bank where the sequencing was available for SARS. It was seen, it was identified, and it was being able to identify which of the genomic sequence will be an apt candidate for making a vaccine which will be producing an antibodies in future as a prospective candidate. Now they have used those cycle, and that's the reason messengers RNAs were the first one to trigger, approve, and got an approval from the regulators. Now the messenger RNA is what? Basically the genomic sequence, and most of the vaccines, if you try to look at it, most of the vaccines are using the S protein. There are various proteins component in the coronavirus, corona SARS virus as such, but within that the spike protein, which is a binding protein, which is required to enter into the human cells, that is where the target is happening. All the vaccines manufacturers or the researchers are targeting toward that. And the messenger RNAs are also using those kind of a genomic sequence. They are within the spike protein. They are using different antigens, different epitopes. That's a different part of the story. So if you look at those numbers, the kind of a 40,000 kind of a candidates were being tested. They have seen for the efficacy trials as well as safety data is available. And for the messenger RNA, if you look at, let's assume if I put serious COVID-19 as a disease, then both the vaccines are almost 100% efficacious. That means it is efficacious up to 95% what they have shown in the kind of a data. But if we convert that change into the serious case, so will it be able to prevent a serious COVID case where the mortality is very high and all that, where it requires an ICU and all that part of it? yes, the chances are that if the person is getting a vaccine, the chances that the person will not get the serious condition. Now, next come to the viral vectors. Now, AstraZeneca is using a chimpanzee adenovirus as a vector. What is a vector? They have a very limiting kind of a multiplications. That's the reason they are saying non-replicating vectors. Now, this non-replicating vectors, they are easy to manipulate. That's the reason they are used as a platforms. What we do, we just select the genomic sequence as an antigen. We put into this vector, and this vector is given inside the body. Antigen presenting cells will pick it up, produce, show to our immune systems, and then they will start producing antibodies against those antigen that has been inserted. So the basic concept in the vector methodology or vector platform is you have to have a vector. This vector is used to introduce a kind of a genome which is considered to be immunogenic, which can produce antibodies which will be able to take care of if there is an exposure to the coronavirus in future. Now, there are two things. One is coming, you must have heard the name of Sputnik. Now, Sputnik is coming from a manufacturer's Gamaleya and from Russia. There is a distinct difference between the two vectors. What they are, both are using adenovirus, but the AstraZeneca is using chimpanzee adenovirus. Why chimpanzee adenovirus is being used? Because it's considered that human, we are already exposed to human adenovirus. Already, as we are exposed to human adenovirus, there is a possibilities of some antibodies inside the body. And if we try to give those kind of an vector inside the body, there is a possibilities there will be a conflict and there will be not an immune response, proper immune response. That's the reason chimpanzees adenovirus is considered to be one of the technological platforms for vector. But similarly, if you look at beautifully Sputnik, what they did it, they are using human adenoviruses, but for the dose 1 and dose 2, they are using two different adenoviruses. Again, that is a different kind of a things. I have read it for the first time where two doses in the same schedules are having a different component in the vaccines per se. As per my learning, as per my understanding, that what I have interpreted, whatever the data that were being available in the public domain as such, I have not gone through the full profile of the product per se, which is not available, which I could not find. But yes, I would like to learn more about this particular vaccines as well. Now, another one is the inactivated. So I'll just go to the right-hand side on the Serum India Institute and the Bharat Biotech, which have recently on 1st January and 2nd January were being approved by the DCGI regulators for the emergency use approval. The approval was a little different between the two. Serum India Institute vaccine is emergency use approval given by the DCGI, and it will be used by the government for the government programs and in the phase-wise manner. Whereas the Bharat Biotech will be used in a clinical trial mode. What does that mean? That means it needs to follow all the steps that are being followed for a clinical trial, where there will be no placebo. But yes, like consenting form needs to be taken. If there are serious adverse events and all that, all compensation guidelines and everything needs to be followed. So that is a kind of a difference as on date. But if you look at the numbers, now I would like your attention in terms, because there are questions coming in specifically from the healthcare professionals, like why the regulators have given us so fast an approval. Again, try to look at the numbers, what they must have looked into it, kind of a things, what they must be thinking when giving an approval at one end, because one of the component or one of the parameters that is being used for the vaccine approval is a benefit risk ratio. Now, as on date, let's assume that Bharat Biotech, we do not have an efficacy data, which will be coming in within a month's time, because they have already enrolled 22,500 subjects out of 25,800 subjects. So safety data is available, that was being presented. Immune response as well as the efficacy will be coming in months' time. And there is an opportunity, that is a vaccine which is safe for sure. Efficacies needs to be looked into. Why cannot it be used where there is a need more as compared to the kind of a number of doses that are available? So from that perspective, they have given under a clinical trial domains. So it should not be perceived a kind of a things which is unsafe, which should not be taken and all that. Given the choice, if somebody asked me which vaccine would I, any vaccines, which is, I would like to have the vaccines today. If somebody comes and somebody says that now you are into that group where you are eligible to take the vaccines, I'll be the first one to go and take that vaccines as such. So if you go through that, each and every vaccines have a different component, different platforms, different schedules, different storage. So this is some things when it comes under national immunization programs, then it becomes a difficult for the implementations per se, specifically for countries like India, where the single vaccines will not be able to take care. So we have to have a multiple vaccines. But most of the time, if currently the two vaccines which are being used, both are 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, both are to be both are 2-dose schedules, both the intervals is 1 month and all that. So these are some of the common parameters which are useful, but sometimes it may happen that the vaccines which are coming or the vaccines will be coming in future may have a different schedules, different route of administration, and that is where care needs to be taken in terms of the implementations perspective. And our healthcare workers, the systems, immunization systems in India is robust enough to take care of those, because you take an example of Rota vaccine, which was recently introduced. Both the vaccines, there are two vaccines introduced in the national program. Both the vaccines are completely distinct, different in terms of the implementations perspective, from the logistic or from the programmatic perspective, but they are beautifully rolled out in the different state. That kind of a stuff may happen. One question is being asked currently is, I'm just trying to answer some of the questions which I've heard in last couple of days on this particular topic as well as earlier, about the interchangeability. If I have taken one vaccine and the vaccine is not available, can I take the other vaccines? The answer is no. As on date, we do not have an interchangeability data. Ideally, you should try to complete with the same vaccine. But if you think the person is at risk, if he is not completing the schedule, then under the guidance of the healthcare systems, there is a possibility they will be able to give you the other vaccines. Because if you try to see, most of the vaccines are using a spike protein, the antigens or epitopes coming from the spike proteins per se as such. So there is a chances, but still, as on date, if feasible, try to ensure that you are completing the schedule by the same vaccine. Next one. Now this is again the kind of a mechanisms everybody was working parallelly. As soon as the vaccines was announced, it was given in UA, we were having an operational guidelines rolled out. Operational guidelines are the guidelines for the healthcare immunization systems, where they are using, so that there is a uniformities all across the countries, where they will be implementing the program as it is desired. And again, I'm not going in the details about, already have touched base on some of the parameters about the two vaccines per se. The point is about the adverse event following immunization. I'll coming to it later part of it. Now, this is one of the best platforms where we can improve upon the safety profile or safety database, because the healthcare workers themselves are getting vaccinated. And if there are any serious adverse events and all that, please report, please document it, so that the database will be, somebody will be able to look at the database, and then they will be taking a kind of a course correction. They will be able to evaluate the benefit risk evaluations. Next, please. Now I'll take 2 or 3 minutes or maybe 5 minutes on this, because this is something which is I am very passionate about it, and something which I am firm believer that if we make a robust safety system or safety surveillance, the vaccine's confidence will increase and not decrease. But there are different school of thought. There are people who presume that if we start reporting more and more and all that, there will be a decline in the confidence. As such, it will not. First, let's understand the concept of adverse event following immunizations. That does not mean that it is causally associated with the vaccine, the product. AEFI have only a temporal association. It needs to be investigated to make it to prove or disprove that is it causally associated or not. Now, there are two types. I'll focus on the serious, because not serious are already documented and all that, and usually it can get captured. But the serious ones which needs to be reported are the unexpected and expected. What do you mean by unexpected? Unexpected means that whatever the data we have currently for the vaccines, like currently we are using 2 vaccines, what are the safety data are available? There is a safety information, please click on multiple 1 or 2 points. There are more animation on this slide. 1 or 2 clicks, please. So you can look at the reference safety information. Now, reference safety information, what is already been documented. But if you know that the clinical trials are under controlled environment and it's on the limited sample size. So we do not know what will happen when it goes to the real life scenarios. So that is where we will be able to capture the unexpected, which is not yet documented. Those are the things which needs to be reported. And what is seriousness? Seriousness is any death that happens after the vaccination. There is a temporal association, or the person gets hospitalized, or the condition is life threatening. The person gets admitted to an ICU, or under critical under critical conditions, or there is some kind of a disability. So such kind of a seriousness is there, and it is unexpected, which is not yet documented. This needs to be reported within 14 days through a systems that is called AFI reporting systems. And what needs to be captured? Go on clicking, please. So if you look at it, what needs to be reported? Simple 4 components are to be reported about the person who is reporting. Let's assume Sanjay Gandhi is giving a vaccine, or the vaccine is getting it given in his clinic. There is an adverse event, there is a fainting attack, or there is a kind of a person having some kind of a shock which needs to be admitted. Now this case needs to be reported. So I should report my details in that reporting form. Second, about that particular person who has received the vaccines, the detail about that particular person, the contact details and all that. So if you want to have history, if you want to follow, we'll be able to follow with him. About the product, which vaccine that was being given, was it within the expiry date, and all those kind of stuff needs to be detailed. And what particular, or the details about the clinical things that we have seen in that particular case needs to be articulated, because that's an area where whatever, even if the verbatim language is used, that is acceptable, because this verbatim language will be articulated in the MATRA language. Again, I'm not going in the details, so that they will be able to have some kind of a signal detections happens. And if there is a need to change the reference safety information, they will change the reference safety information. And if there is a more risk and less benefit, if the safety overpowers the, if there are concerns, safety concerns are there as compared to the benefit, there is a possibility the regulators will withdraw the vaccine from the market. It has happened in the past where this kind of a things has happened, and the vaccine was being withdrawn from the market. But these are very, very rare examples. The only way it can be done is by reporting. And reporting is like in the clinical trial, it happens solicited means we proactively ask for the what happens, did you have this, did you have that, and all those kind of stuff. But unsolicited reporting is something which, as a healthcare professional, as a member of the IMA, we should be aware of, and we should start reporting about it. Yeah, so about the adverse, so there is one concept which I think which is a kind of a little late coined, or little being made aware. Just for your information, there is a concept called adverse event of special interest. Now, what is adverse event of special interest during the clinical trial? Let's assume that we have identified some cases in the placebo group, and some cases, some kind of an serious events in the active group as well, though there are no statistical significance and difference between the two groups. So the regulators usually gives, but they pick up those kind of a cases that there is a safety issue which needs to be monitored. They becomes an adverse event of special interest, like neurological conditions which are to be considered. 1 or 2 cases which was being identified in the one of the trials in UK in both the arms. It's not that it was only in the one arm. So there could be a kind of a background rate. Important concept, very, very important. Please do not link each and every AFI to the vaccine. It is just a starting point. Somebody will investigate and conclude that it is not related to the vaccine. However, this will happen only once we start giving those kind of information to the systems, once we start reporting to those kind of systems. So in those trials, what they have found, there was a transverse myelitis was being seen. Now, if you look, let's assume that vaccine is not getting rolled out. Can you say with confidence that transverse myelitis is not happening in the population? It is happening. Whatever is happening, that is called a background rate. But the lack of data doesn't mean it is not happening. In our part of the world, the surveillance is not great. But now this is the right time to try to look into some of the conditions which will be a kind of a scenes which are common, which are a kind of a things which will be related by the media, stating that okay, after taking the vaccine there was a death. Because in our polio days also we have seen kind of a front page news. It was not about the coverage. Whenever there was a polio round happening, always there was a small piece of information on the front page. Polio ki dawa dene se bacche ki maut. That kind of a heading, because the media used to take up that one. Again, media needs to be educated. I think they are very well primed. They need to be articulated very well. And I think they are doing a great job nowadays as compared to what was to be done earlier days. Next. Now coming to the vaccine confidence, last two slide on this aspect about now very important for healthcare professionals. I myself have received calls differently that we will try to defer the taking the vaccine little to a later date. And the concern is like two major concerns that are coming in, like the vaccine trials are moving very fast. Vaccine trials are moving very fast. And second concern that is being, if you look at the India data, it's a small piece, but graphical presentation, there is in India 34 and 16%, like almost 50% were having some apprehension, either because of the safety or because something was moving very fast. So we were not accustomed to those kind of a trials. We were not accustomed to those kind of a timelines. However, having said that, if you look at safety is a benchmarking for any kind of a regulatory approvals all across from phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3, that is being looked at a microscopic level at an each and every case that was being reported. So from the safety perspective, I rest assured that whatever the vaccines we have EUA, emergency use approvals, are safe for sure. Now coming to the efficacy part, yes, there are vaccines which will be coming to have the kind of an immunological or efficacy responses in coming days. But do we have some kind of an intervention as on date for a prevention of COVID? Yes, we have some, but again, they are human behavioral kind of a things where we can't have it implemented 24/7 for a longer duration of time. We have seen that face mask is an excellent way of preventing a kind of a transmission. Hand washing is a very good mode. Another way of kind of a social distancing. This has worked very well. We have seen in the specifically in the developing part of the world where the densities are high and all that, or because it could be because of some underlying different reasons and all that, but we did very well in those sense. Having said that, but can we continue those kind of an intervention for a longer duration of time? The answer is no. So we have to have some kind of a solutions. Right now we have a solution in place. Now we need to use it and try to build a database to ensure that whatever we are trying to have will be able to achieve the kind of an response we are expecting. Next, please. Now this is I sincerely appreciate Indian Medical Association. Now coming with the kind of this advocacy messages is very, very important. As a mouthpiece, as a spokesperson, the person should be fully credible, fully able to understand what are the dynamics and all that, and they are able to articulate appropriately. And this is something which needs to be articulated very well. So if you are having any concern as an individual, speak one-to-one with the expert. But if you have if you are a kind of you understand it very well, you are gone through it, you yourself have taken the vaccines, become an advocate. At an individual level, organizational level, already they have started doing that kind of stuff. On the similar lines, we can do something at the district level as well. Yeah, so this is just to end my talk, because there are some kind of a topic that has been discussed about the in the lay press or in the kind of a social media about the herd immunity. Why not herd immunity now? Many people have infected. People are now shown to be positive, but they're asymptomatic. They're not having the disease. Then why we need to take vaccines and all that? So herd immunity is a beautiful concept, but sometimes it comes at a cost. Now, what is that cost? We don't know. And I'll just take one case study again, as per my understanding or my readings and what I've understood about. So take a classical example of Sweden. Now, Sweden, if you see that, they have gone ahead with the concept of herd immunity. They thought that if we try to expose to the larger population, if there is a kind of a mixing up, the more and more people will try to get infected. and the susceptible group will go down, and over a period of time, the infection will die down. However, it backfired. It didn't work very well in Sweden. So that is one classical example, but other countries, most of the countries have gone ahead with some kind of a restriction. But again, that's not a appropriate way to understand about the whole herd immunity about it. Like if you are having some like social distancing, do not move out of house, or having a mask when you are trying to. So these are some of the interventions based on which, so we do not know the true herd immunity, which is dependent on RO. RO is basically pronounced as R naught, and which is just a kind of a potency of transmittability of a particular organism, and it depends on multiple factors. Like we I've said that you take the data on the screen, which is coming from one of the Indian studies. They have calculated the R naught, the kind of 2.6 before the lockdown, and after, because there was some intervention, there was less of the mixing up and all that, the RO was brought down to 1.57. And they say that if you want to come out of the pandemic, when the disease becomes endemic, then you have to bring the RO or R naught below 1. That is where need to be. And the best way to improve the herd immunity is to give the vaccinations. Because as on date, we do not know the natural immunity, natural infections will give immunity or not. There are cases where they have shown that, okay, if I get positive, asymptomatic, there is a possible, or if I get a disease now, there is a possibility I may not get a disease up to 3 months or 2 to 3 months, but later on there are cases where they have got the disease again. So we do not know the natural infections will give a immunity for how long. Will it be lasting for a longer duration of time? That we are not aware of. So that's the way, if we try to build a kind of an immunity by some kind of an interventions by vaccinating a larger cohort of group. Specifically now, if you look at it, the way the government of India has, the other places also they are trying to roll out is, first phase they are trying to vaccinate the healthcare worker, because they are at the front end. They are at the highest risk. It is better to get controlled exposure than to get an uncontrolled exposure into your day-to-day settings, into clinical settings where you are at a higher risk of contracting the virus, getting infected. You may be asymptomatic, but yes, we never know what are the underlying parameters or underlying conditions which will take you forward toward the COVID-19 and then the seriousness about it. So that's all from my end. If you have any queries, we can have a couple of questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Gandhi, for having a very illustrative as well as detailed information regarding all the vaccines. I hope you have covered actually most of the parameters, most of the things in the minds of people, the questions. But still, for very easy illustration, I would like to ask you some of the questions, so that because people have not yet given their questions on the chat box, but I am looking for it. And few questions like you made it. Yeah.
There is one question.
So,
I don't know how the chat will work. So somebody will read the chat box.
Yeah, chat box. Okay. Actually, we have to.
Okay.
One question: is it safe in pregnancy and lactation? That's a question which Dr. Mrs. Chande she has asked.
Okay. So basically, if you try to look at in the slide which I have shown, there is a letter which came from the government of India. Because of the paucity of the data, they have said not to be given in pregnancies, not to be given in less than 18 years, and not to be given during the lactating period. Now, having said that, over a period of time, usually what happens in the real life situations, then the benefit risk ratio needs to be looked into, and somebody gets vaccinated during this period, that needs to be documented. Ideally, it should not be, but if the risk is higher, then if it has been given, get it documented so the database gets built up.
Another question is that why everyone in India is not given the same vaccine? Why we have two vaccines like Covishield and Covax?
So I'll try to have a counter question to that, which give me a name of a vaccine which is a single given by a single manufacturer in India. We are a cohort of 27 birth cohort annually. And if it's a 3-dose or 2-dose schedule, like 54 million doses to 80 million doses are required per annum. So that kind of a manufacturing capacity is not, India is a kind of a supplier, not to only India, but 2/3 part of the world. So from that perspective, from the vaccine security perspective, it is always good to have multiple players because it's a biological product and it's a very, very regulated product or a regulated environment. If anything goes wrong, you cannot supply the vaccine. So you have to have a backup plans always available. So I'm just giving an example, not about this particular vaccine. Let's assume something happens with a vaccines, something happens because of safeties or because of something. You should always have a backup in a countries like India where we have a big cohort to be vaccinated. So vaccine security is one of the important components where where like I will like to have more vaccines coming in next couple of months, which are in pipeline.
Okay. One
Sir,
more
Hello,
question. People.
Sanjay.
Sanjay, sir.
Sanjay, Dr. Narlawar here. I would like to ask one question.
Please go ahead, sir.
Hello, Dr. Sanjay.
One by one, sir.
Yeah. Sir,
Dr.
actually, it is better for you. You write the question. We'll take your questions. But
Yeah,
being
so-
the professor head of PSM, I am allowing Dr. Narlawar to ask the question. You are most welcome, sir.
Both the
Chat box
Sanjay,
is not open.
excellent organization of this program. Dr. Sanjay Gandhi has given excellent account of all the important thing. I have one question, Sanjay.
Mhm.
One of the relative contraindication that has been mentioned in vaccine is giving some drugs which are actually they are blood thinner. So yesterday we come across some
Sorry,
patients
come,
or
sir.
some
Sorry, come
across those who are having coronary heart disease. They are on anticoagulant like aspirin or clopidogrel. So can we should it be treated as a contraindication?
Sir, can you come the first part of the question? First part.
First part is that one of the contraindication that has been mentioned in the guideline is those who are taking blood thinners.
Yes.
Now the blood thinners are not been specified whether they are anticoagulant or whether they are the antiplatelet agents.
Okay.
So antiplatelet agents like aspirin or clopidogrels are routinely being taken by those who are having coronary heart disease. So
Okay.
can it be treated as a contraindication for giving the vaccine?
Yeah, sir. In this case, I would like to be play safe and I would avoid giving the vaccine because that is mentioned as a contraindication which is not specified. So there are two ways of looking at it. As of now, I'll defer the vaccinations. I'll try to have a clarifications. What does they mean by that? But I will interpret that all the kind of blood thinners or anticoagulants should try to be avoided. I'll interpret that way. But this is subject to interpretation. Yeah.
Those who are having coronary heart disease, they should not take the vaccine.
Yeah, so in that case, if you kind of go for an interpretation and all that, but again, if you try to look at it in different perspective, again, I'm coming back with the norm of benefit risk evaluation. Again, it's being considered, it's being evaluated that the people with comorbid conditions, are having at a higher risk as compared to a normal individuals and all that. And if I remember correctly, the AstraZeneca trial in UK, they have included couple of comorbid conditions. Diabetes was there, and I remember cardiovascular diseases were also there. But I need to cross check and I need to come back on that. But the having asked about the specific query about the blood thinners, if they have not specified, and if you believe as a clinician that also have a similar implications when we are trying to treat, try to avoid or try to defer it for a later date.
Okay,
Okay.
one more
Sanjay,
question.
Sanjay,
if
sir.
allowed.
Sir, there are many questions. So
Sanjay,
please-
good morning. Dr. Suresh Chandak here.
Sir,
Yeah,
Suresh,
Please.
Yeah.
let's have a through moderator. We
Yeah,
can
yeah.
have a,
Okay.
Yeah,
Very nice presentation by you.
thank you.
Yes. I
Yeah,
just want
both
to ask
Sanjay.
one question, very technical question, that if a person is having some vaccination earlier to COVID vaccination,
Hmm.
like one question was asked in chat box that I have taken one hepatitis B booster dose 4 days back. Now, can I take COVID vaccination too?
Yeah. So again, the principle remain the same. If you look at most of them to be considered as a live, though in the pure sense way we have to articulate earlier that whenever the live virus vaccines are to be given, it needs to be given on the same day, or there should be a gap of 28 days. Now, having said that, if you try to look at the corona vaccines, now hepatitis B is a recombinant technologies where we are using a vector. Again, vectors are non-replicating and all that part of it. I will presume them as a kind of a kill vaccines, and there should not be any harm in taking the vaccines.
Sanjay sir, I want to ask one question. Sanjay sir, just now, sir has said that there is after natural infection, we don't know for how much time the immunity will last. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you, after taking vaccination, for how much period we are prevented from that vaccine, or do we need to take the booster dose? Is there any specified time for that?
Yeah, so basically, sir, these vaccines are under development. The data is getting collected. So these are very, as you seen, usually the vaccines, the full data set required almost like 15 years. So the time will tell about the kind of an immune response. But again, these are some kind of a logical responses based on the kind of an experience with the past vaccines. So whenever a vaccine, if identified, which we understand the pathogenesis, we have picked up the right antigen, there are high chances or high likelihood that immune response will be good. Now, immune response is a proxy indicator to efficacy. Right now, we do not know the correlate of protection. The efficacy is to be proven. Then confidently we can say that vaccine will be able to prevent or is beneficial amongst the vaccinated as compared to non-vaccinated.
Can we measure it with the measuring of the antibody in the serum of the patient?
Yes. Yeah, that is the parameter. So geometric mean concentration is one of the parameters for any immunological immunological correlate that is being assessed. They do a geometric mean concentrations. In these cases, in corona, most of the time when they are using the spike protein, they do anti-spike IgG.
Okay. Sir, next one question, please. Last question from my side. If some virus is mutated in the future, so can that mutation of the virus taking care of in the present COVID vaccine?
So that's a very good question, sir. Again, I'll put it what I'm aware of the current variant. So there are you must be aware of the influenza. Now, influenza is known for mutations, and that the reasons annually the antigenic structure changes in the vaccines, and the vaccine manufacturer have to produce the vaccine which is on an annual basis, 6 monthly basis, depending on the which hemisphere it belongs to. Now, coming to this part, the two mutations that are being reported, one is from UK and one is from South Africa. Now, what they have articulated, current understanding. Now, this is what I'm saying is the current understanding says that it has increased the transmittability. The RO must have increased. The R naught must have increased. I do not know what is the number RO as of now for those variant, but it has increased. But has it increased the severity of the disease? No. And again, what I have read about it is basically is the RBD, that is the receptor binding protein, which is getting affected. And if you know that the kind of a virus entries into the cells is basically through an ACE2 receptors. If because of the mutation, if they are unable to contact or because they are unable to link with the ACE2 receptors and all that, there are least likely they will be trying to cause a severity of or even the disease as such. But again, time will tell. Will this vaccine will be equally effective against the mutants as well? My prediction is yes, it should work because it's coming from the spike proteins, which is a key antigen as such.
One question from Dr. Ravi Sarnaik. He is a task force member of Nagpur COVID team and a pulmonologist. What should be the strategy for individual who is on high dose steroid for underlying lung disease? For example, prednisone 60 milligram once a day.
If I read because I could not find the prescribing information for the Bharat Biotech's vaccine, but what the letter which is coming from government India, they have categorically stated, or there is a remark which is mentioned. And if I read between the lines, I would try to avoid giving the vaccines those who are under steroid therapy and those who are under the anti-malarial drugs. These are
Okay.
the two groups. But somebody needs to check on that. So this I'm just giving with some caveat. This needs to be counter checked.
Okay. Dr. Sanjay Devtare is having some question. He is a president-elect. I am in Nagpur. I request him to unmute himself and ask the question. Dr. Sanjay Devtare.
Sir, thank you. Some of the healthcare worker, they are saying, are we guinea pig to take the vaccines? Why not the other person to take the vaccine? So what's your personal opinion about this?
Sir, I will say that it is again somewhere we have as a healthcare professional failed to articulate appropriately. So I think I take the onus on me as well as an individual where we have failed to communicate rightly or properly. People need to understand the dynamisms of the public health. People need to understand the pandemic. People need to understand what kind of an impact it is causing. Why they are being, because I think I'll put it this way, I am little unlucky. I'm not lucky as the healthcare professionals because I'm not in clinical practice. I'm of 55 years of age, and probably I'll be getting the vaccine in phase 2. Till that, my mobility is restricted, till all the activities are restricted and all that. But having said that, I think healthcare professionals are at privilege to be given the vaccines. Why they are being chosen first is just because of their at-risk behavior, because of their clinical practice, because they have to take care of the COVID-19 patients and asymptomatics who is coming to the lab for the diagnostics and all that. We never know who are asymptomatic and all that. So because of that, that is a policy phase-wise and all that. And it has happened, this is for the first time. Earlier, if you also look at it, hepatitis B, but in a different, it was not a pandemic then, the vaccine was available, but again, it was being given to, because healthcare workers are at risk. So there are vaccines which are only targeted toward the healthcare workers. Influenza vaccines targeted toward pregnant women, healthcare workers, elderlies. Why it is not been given to the kids? Why it's not given to adolescents? Because they are not at that kind of a risk what these kind of a people are. So my answer to them is, just because they are at a higher risk, they should take, and please do not consider themselves as guinea pig.
I think there were a lot of questions on blood thinners and anticoagulants. I think Dr. Narlawar asked it and you answered it. So it is safer, or will you say that vaccination should be avoided?
Again, I'm not a very kind of a technical person in treating and the detailed pharmacological actions of those drugs. So I would try to have a kind of an expert opinion, those who are using the drug, what is the kind of an impact? Is it a kind of a relevant in terms of blood thinners? They have a similar kind of a mechanism of action, then I will try to avoid. But I'll try to defer these questions to the clinical experts or those who are treating, trying to understand what is the, but there is a contraindication that has been articulated not to be given when the blood thinners are being given.
One more question.
I have a question.
Actually, may I know who is speaking?
Yeah, Dr. Shweta Agarwal. I have recently shifted from Rajasthan to Maharashtra. So how would I get vaccinated? I have not registered anywhere.
You will have to register in the corporation, or are you an employee of any organization?
No, I have started my clinical practice in private practice in last 2 months actually.
I can answer that question.
Yeah.
You will have to mail to the corporation, Nagpur Municipal Corporation, and you can just contact our IMA office, our IMA president, Dr. Archana Kothari, and you can take my number, and then you can contact me, so that I will make you contact to Dr. Archana Kothari. My number is 99229 41483.
99229
41483.
41483.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, okay. Dr. Gandhi, people have not asked this question, but it's a very important thing which I just wanted to ask you, that whether there is any food interaction while taking the vaccination, and most importantly with alcohol and other drugs.
Again, I have not gone through those kind of evidence as such. Again, I will not consider as a kind of a restrictive to get the vaccine as such, but I have not read it, so I'll reserve my comments on that as well.
Okay. And what about immunocompromised people like HIV? or other receiving any antimetabolites or anti-cancer drugs?
If I have not seen any kind of a contraindications coming in from the two, because what is happening, the whole data set is not available in public domain. So giving those kind of a response, but again, this can be asked by the authorities as such, specifically for that. But in the if you look at the contraindication, not recommended, there are 3 categories, which I remember: lactations, pregnant women, and greater than less than 18 years.
The last question for all of us, means for all doctors and for IMA activists also. How should we go about and tell people now? Because this time it is only for doctors, but afterwards it will be open for all others, and there will be a lot of questions and queries from the minds of non-medical people to the doctors. So how to go about it? How to advise others also, and how IMA should make an advocacy. Local IMA, state IMA. You have seen that national IMA has already advocated the vaccine. So give some advice to the local IMAs also.
So that's a good one, and I think we can contribute a lot. If you look at the regulators, if you look at the government, if you look at the manufacturers and all that, they have done an unprecedented job by bringing the vaccine to the market. Now it is our role, the who need to take the vaccine, as well as a giver also. So we have a big role to play. So a couple of things that come to my mind is, first thing is like, try to ensure that IMA Nagpur at the least as a model city, IMA Nagpur have a coverage of 95% or more than that. 5% I'm just, because the kind of a question Narlavar has asked, because there will be some contraindications and all that where you are not advised to take the vaccine, but otherwise 95% of the coverage you should try to report. Second, as and when there is an adverse event reporting, you consider that it could be related, not related. Don't try to go in the details about the clinical things. If there is a serious adverse event, please report within 14 days in a specified format. If you don't want to fill the format, at least bare minimum information you share with the people who are responsible for the implementation of the program. Third point, when we go for a voting, for a demographics and all that, what we do is we show our fingers like this, that I have given a voting kind of a things. So why don't you take some kind of a photograph when you are taking a vaccines, and try to put, whenever a patient comes to you, at least proudly you can say that, okay, I am also a recipient of the same vaccines, which is getting recommended to you as such. You can put on those social medias. Now, one thing is like, even I have seen forwards coming in on the doctors groups also, which are not cross-checked. So let's assume there is some, it could be fake, it could be authentic, it could be right, we don't know. But just a kind of an suggestion to all my colleagues, all my fellow colleagues of IMA Nagpur, is whatever is coming on your WhatsApp or social media, forward it. Forward if it is positive, forward if you feel that it needs to be shared, but after verification of the facts. And as an organization, I think you're doing wonderfully good. IMA Nagpur, if you do some kind of advocacies within the communities and all that, like they did for at the national level, at the state level, that will be again wonderful.
Yeah, one good suggestion came from Dr. Mrudul Chande. She told and she advised that Nagpur Municipal Corporation should have holdings with IMA, means telling the benefits of vaccination. So that can also be done. One of the things I think for advocacy.
Sure.
So I think most of the questions have been answered, and I must congratulate you, Dr. Sanjay Gandhi, for a very good talk. Covered all the aspects.
One more question from me.
And
Sanjay, one more question from me, if you allow.
Yeah, sir. Who cannot? I cannot say no to you. You are allowed.
Yes.
Basically, the question is related to some important, because Sanjay Gandhi is related with the clinical research.
Yes.
And the GMC Nagpur has received Covaxin. This is the only one site at Nagpur where we are giving the Covaxin. And as far as guidelines for Covaxin is concerned, they mentioned that it should be treated just like a trial.
Yes.
And actually, it is a adverse effect of AEFI trial that they have said. So we are taking all the consent form, and then we are giving the adverse effect form to all the participants. My question is that if it is treated as a trial, then there is no, if anybody suffers from AEFI,
Mhm.
then that is to be reported to the local ethics committee. That is one of the guideline in any kind of trials. But
Yeah.
as far as this particular vaccine is concerned, there is no role of local or institutional ethics committee. So in case of any AEFI, only the reporting format is there, and we are supposed to report that to the concerned higher authority. But what about the role of institutional ethics committee in as far as Covaxin is concerned?
Sir, I'll put it this way. What I have understood, I have read that subject expert committee recommendations on the website of the CDSCO. Now, I'll just try to correlate with the phase 4 trial. What is a phase 4 trial? Once the vaccines get approved, there are some concerns in the mind of the regulators. What they try to ask to the manufacturers is that you add on more safety data and the other kind of a data, like there are many examples. Again, I'll not repeat on that. Now, in this particular case, they have tried to, though there is a shift on the left-hand side, but this is a kind of a it's mimicking on the similar side, where it is getting reported as an adverse event following immunizations. So as a good practice, again, if it is not mandated by the regulators, nobody can challenge and all that, but as a good practice, as your institution is having it, you can just keep them informed about it. But if it is not mandated, because it's not coming as a kind of a clinical trial approval which you are submitting, so somebody is submitting and all that. So again, another point is you can cross check with the again, who is supplying you the vaccine? Is the government supplying or the manufacturing supplying for the trial?
Government is supplying.
Yeah. So basically, the whole idea here is to capture additional data related to the safety part of it that needs to be shared to the regulators. That will go through that system of the. So again, I have not shown one slide. The immunization program is done by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. There are multiple divisions. One division is CDSCO and another division of the immunization division. This program is getting implemented by the immunization divisions. Whatever the EFI that will be captured, everything will get reported to the CDSCO as well. I do not have the full dynamics. You must have, if you have some more guidance, we can have an offline talk as well on more details on this as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. And congratulations for your excellent presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Thank you all the participants for a very lively discussion, asking many questions. Otherwise, many times a moderator like me has to ask the questions, but I need not required to use my brain and ask the questions. Thank you very much for the very lively talk, all the participants. Now I will give the mic and all the proceedings to Dr. Dinesh Agrawal.
Thank you, Sanjay Deshpande sir, for nicely moderating the today's session, and thank you to today's speaker, Dr. Sanjay Gandhi sir, for enlightening us about each and every aspect of the vaccine. It might have been cleared all the issues of the every participants. Now I request our secretary, Dr. Savar Bande sir, to propose a formal vote of thanks. Rajesh sir.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Over to Savar Bande sir.
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of IMA Nagpur branch, myself, Dr. Rajesh Savar Bande, Secretary, IMA Nagpur, and entire fraternity of Nagpur IMA, sincerely thanks to our chief guest, Dr. Mangesh Patil sir, who is National Secretary of IMA HBI, who spent his busiest time for gracing our occasion. I am also thankful to Dr. Sanjay Gandhi, who is public health specialist, for adorning the occasion and sharing his opinion today. Sir, your thoughts have enlightened our minds and shown us a new path. I am very grateful to Dr. Sanjay Deshpande sir for his efforts towards today's webinar as a moderator. I need to mention my deep sense of appreciation towards Dr. Dinesh Agrawal sir, who is Vice President of IMA and coordinator of today's web CME. Our sincere gratitude goes to all the participants and well-wishers for today's meeting for your support, cooperation, and encouragement. Thank you very much for joining this event. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all.
And thanks to IMA Nagpur.
Rajesh,
Madam.
You need to thank DigiShield for giving such a wonderful platform.
Yes, thank you, Dipen, and all the team of DigiShield for their technical support. Thank you.
And thank you, IMA Nagpur, for having an excellent webinar on this current issue.